is Tom Baker. I'm 32 years old. I've worked for Urban and Civic for nearly 10 years. Urban and Civic are a large-scale residential developer. Primarily we're buying land, conventionally unconsented land, so whether it be agricultural or ex-industrial land, often brownfield land that we then take to the planning process with the aim of getting very large-scale residential consents that would also bring forward schools, open space, community facilities, whether it's health, so that effectively you are extending urban areas and creating new places for people to live and to enjoy living. Within that company, I'm a development surveyor. I've been qualified since 2012, and we'll get on to a bit about what that entails later. The property industry has general titles such as surveyor. People often misinterpret that and think that that means you measure buildings all day or tell them what's kind of structurally right or wrong with a building or a property. Actually, in reality, it covers a wide range of roles. Fundamentally, my main role is liaising with house builders who are responsible for building houses on land that we own and get planning consent for, working with them on design and architecture, the right types of houses, the right mix of whether it's a 2-bedroom flat or a 5-bedroom house, and we're building them in the right areas, and we're dealing with legal contracts and ensuring that the houses are built properly, on time, and therefore making our shareholders money. The most typical task I do is going out to the market and trying to entice offers for a housing parcel or some land that we've got consent for. So effectively you'd say to an agent, you deal with agents and local market participants, house builders that I may or may not know, we've got a parcel for 10 acres or 200 houses, what would you like to build, how much would you pay us for that land, what would it look like, when would you pay us, and dealing with the commercial terms of that offer and making sure it's the right thing for us to be entering into as a business. Within that though, we've got an awful lot of design experience. I'd have to make sure things appear correct and that fundamentally that they will sell. I'd also be part of the design process for schools, things like doing contracts to get convenience stores on site, making sure we're aware of the local market and who else is active in the area. On a daily basis I speak to lawyers, making sure that contracts are properly worded, make sure we're doing the right deal and fundamentally that we're covered legally. I also deal with architects incredibly often, whether it's designing thousands of units in a big open piece of land or actually individual houses. Agents who are responsible for fundamentally selling land, selling property and knowing the market. We also deal with accountants in terms of making sure they process whether the money's coming in or whether it's not. Things like tax advice, and lastly, also local stakeholders. So it's one thing saying this is what we want to do, but actually it has to be right for the area and you have to be likely to get planning consent. So from people who live locally, but also straight the way through to the local authorities that should give you the consent. The conventional route years ago would always be that you'd often have family or friends in the property industry, you'd know people and you'd say, my dad's a surveyor, my dad works in property, so I want to do the same thing. And typically you'd then go and do a 3-year undergraduate course in something like real estate or property. That didn't require any specific A-levels, people often did geography, sometimes economics and maths, but it didn't require anything special. A lot of the old polytechnic universities specialise in it, so Reading, Oxford Brookes, Nottingham Trent. Conventionally now that's changing slightly and people tend to go and do a normal degree, so 3 years of doing a normal undergraduate degree anywhere. It might be English, geography, I did philosophy. Realise actually that doesn't naturally lead to a career. Do a bit of work experience, try different things, almost fall on the property, but then realise that you have to then do some direct training that gets you there. And then you do a 1-year master's. So it used to be 3 years, you knew what you were doing, you go into property. Now it's much more 3 years, you're not quite so sure, you do a bit of work experience, you realise it's property, you then need to do another year and do a master's. And lots of the same universities do that as well. Cambridge do a course at undergrad and postgrad, Reading, Oxford Brookes, Northumberland, Cass in London. So there's an awful lot of places to do it, but it's either the undergrad route or the postgrad route. I think The main thing is probably attention to detail. Whilst it's an awful lot about meeting people, speaking to different people, learning, being out and about, actually appraising offers, knowing the detail of what you do is very important. So therefore keeping notes, being comfortable on Word, Excel, being happy with numbers. A lot of people don't do maths A-level and go into property, but I think it's certainly a useful thing to have. And also things like good timekeeping and the usual organisation really. I did a philosophy degree at Nottingham. Knew I wanted to work in London, knew it would be something quite commercial, so I tried working in work experience in banks, in law firms. Third time lucky, found property. Got the philosophy degree from Nottingham and went and then did a kind of almost like a sandwich year, but it was a work experience year with Savills, who are one of the big consultants, and they sponsored me to go to Cambridge and do a master's, which was in real estate and finance. That was a one-year course, and from there I joined Urban and Civic. The conventional route is to go back to a company like Savills or Jones Lang LaSalle, but the market wasn't particularly positive, and it was kind of any job you could take, you went for at that point. The common route is definitely university. Most people have done either the undergrad or the postgrad route, as I've said. The reason for that is the long-term aim for pretty much all roles within property, excluding estate agents, are to qualify within the RICS. The RICS is the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors. That effectively necessitates that you have to have had a degree at either undergrad or postgrad level. You can, however, get into an apprenticeship through a company like Savills, CBRE. They're now taking apprenticeships. I think it's quite a new thing. About a year or two ago they started doing it. I think they're paid internships, and effectively they will then sponsor you to either do university degrees in the evenings around your work, or you possibly take days off and do kind of day leave. It gets you to the same place that eventually you've got a degree and eventually you're going to qualify as a chartered surveyor. It's probably a slower way, but it's a way that probably is safer because you know that you like the job before you're committing yourself to all that money and that time at university. It's quite fixed when you're young and you come into the industry. So if you're working at one of the big consultants I mentioned before, Savills, CBRE, Jones Lang, you will start on roughly 25 to 30,000. You then qualify 2 years afterwards, and we'll touch on it shortly, but I mentioned it earlier about becoming a chartered surveyor. You've got a 2-year training programme with it was called the APC. That 2 years, once you pass, you'd effectively get a pay rise up to anywhere from low 30s to up to probably £40,000 per year. You're then eligible for bonuses as well. Property is quite a lucrative industry in terms of bonuses. People can commonly earn, when you're young, 25% of their salary again as a bonus. The more senior you get, that percentage goes up as well. And after you turn about 30, it's very hard to say what you'll earn, because it kind of depends on experience and how good you are, how good the market is. But it's very easy to progress. Let's say that you finish university, whether it's the 3-year undergrad route or the 1-year postgrad route, you'll start as a graduate surveyor. You'll be entering either a consultant or a developer direct, and you won't have any direct working experience at that point. So what they'll try and do is they'll try and give you rotations. Rotations mean you get different experience in different parts of the business, so you might spend time in the investment team, in the agency team, in the development team, in planning, and the purpose of that is to try and see, one, what you enjoy, and two, to see what you're good at and what the business thinks that where you fit. That doesn't change salary. What it does is it teaches you focusing on what you're effectively becoming more specialist in. You qualify after 2 years and you've had your interview and your exam to qualify, and after that you pick effectively one of the bits you've learnt before and what you've done, and you go into that area. So you might have spent 6 months with an evaluation team and you really enjoyed that, and you agree with your old boss that I'll come back to you once I've qualified. From there, it's effectively that becomes your job. You don't then move departments anymore. and it's about progression within that role. So it's about becoming better at what you do, more senior and being trusted with more responsibility, and with that comes higher salaries and like I say, more experience and responsibility. So it's become a lot more formalised than it used to be. It used to be very much an ad hoc, who do you know, can you get someone's dad to kind of introduce you to the right people and get you in. I had some experience of that, and often it was very helpful, but actually it's now become a lot more formal. So all of the big property companies now have formal summer schemes, sometimes at Christmas or Easter schemes as well. They require applications, so it's very much like a job application for work experience. You'll actually have either an interview or an assessment day to even get those places. They're sought after, and the reason they're sought after is that if you do well on one, you're almost certain to get a job either at that company or at another company. They're really worth doing. The reason I say they're worth doing is, one, because you get to understand what the job's like, and therefore is it the right thing for you to do. But also, it's really about making yourself appealing on paper. If you're going to go for a job interview and they get 500 applicants, if you've had experience, I always think of it a bit like sport. If someone asks you, are you a good footballer, you could say yes or no, but actually if you said I've had trials at Man United, the first thing they're going to think is, this guy can obviously play. But actually, if you play a game a little bit and think to yourself, okay, if I can go and get work experience at the top 3 or 4 property companies, at the very least I'll get myself interviews elsewhere, and hopefully actually be able to land a job at the end of it. It's a good distinction actually, where you say where would you train. There's 2 main types of companies within the property industry. There's consultants who advise other people who either own property or work for people who own property, and there's the property developers themselves. To train, it's fantastic to go to the advisors, because these consultants will have multiple clients, and across all different types of property, different locations, different styles of building, so you learn a lot very quickly. These companies are the likes of Savills, C.B. Richard Ellis, Jones Lang LaSalle, Knight Frank, Cushman & Wakefield, all big brands, all global, and will be fantastic for passing your APC, but also kind of learning the ropes. Property developers themselves are slightly less famous probably. So you've got the likes of Land Securities, British Land, Hammerson, Urban and Civic fits in this category, and we're almost specialists. So we know what we want to do, we've been doing it for years, and to get a job there, conventionally you normally have got more experience. So you do train first and then you go and join a developer. So, best piece of advice I was ever told was, figure out where you want to be in 10 or 20 years and kind of work backwards and think to yourself, okay, so this is where I want to be, but to get there, how do I get there? And the reason I say that is because I think you want to avoid things that close doors. So I closed the door of becoming a doctor by not going and doing a medicine degree. Now that's fine, because I didn't want to become a doctor, but actually there's certain things that I wouldn't do for property, say, that if it was another field it would be a bit different. I think other piece of advice, don't underestimate how much work experience will separate you from other candidates. I graduated in a particularly bad macroeconomic climate, and I had friends that had got an undergrad at Oxford, a postgrad at Cambridge, but they'd not done any work experience, and they really struggled to get jobs over people who had less fancy degrees but had worked hard. So try and use your summers, travel a bit, have fun, but also try and do a bit of work experience. And then the final piece of advice is, don't get too disheartened if you don't get the first job you think you're going for. You might have been used to being top of the class and always doing well, but you're competing against 500 people who want that same job, or those same 10 jobs. So actually, don't be cocky, but equally don't be too disheartened if you don't get it. And be yourself at interview, because if someone doesn't like who you really are, you probably wouldn't want to work there anyway. I suppose you need to be thinking to yourself, what types of things do you enjoy? So for me, I'm really sociable, I like spending time with people. So straight away, being a lawyer, most of the time at my desk, yes, you have client meetings, but a lot of it is time on your own, in front of a computer or reading documents. That didn't lend itself to my personality type. I then started thinking, okay, so what jobs are sociable? So you start thinking about insurance, sales, style jobs, property, and actually, for me, the thing that really made me go into property was the fact that not only was it sociable and and you have a mix of different styles of work, but it was the variety of the work. And also, I grew up in areas of the country where I moved around a couple of times, and the areas have changed from new shopping centres or new expansions to cities, new train lines. I just found it exciting that you could improve people's lives by doing something to an area, whether it was building a new football stadium or whether it was building new parks nearby. So I did maths at GCSE. I chose not to do it at A-level, mainly because I genuinely thought I wouldn't get as good at grades if I did economics, but still wanted to keep my toe into kind of business and the commercial side of things. I think that was the right decision, so I needed the grades to get into the university I wanted to go to, but actually later on it would have been incredibly useful to have had maths A-level, so that's a big one to kind of bear in mind. And equally, if you don't then do maths for years, you come back to it in your job, and a lot of people then straight away need the calculator and things. Other things I did, I made sure I worked really hard to get a 2-1 at Nottingham. One of the biggest, I didn't mention it earlier, but one of the biggest kind of tips, there's so many people now that get 2-1s that I would say it's almost becoming a bit of a prerequisite in the employment market. If you don't think you can get a 2-1 at the course you're applying for, at the university you're applying for, I'd really consider doing that course, because I think that there's lots of job applications for whether it's a big bank, whether it's law firms, accountants, and they need a 2-1. So that really will make it harder for you if you don't get that. And then the final step was always making sure that my undergrad course I did wouldn't mean it was impossible to do the masters that I wanted to do. I didn't necessarily know it was going to be in real estate, but actually you can, from Nottingham, take a humanities degree and go and do a master's in something else, and there's no problem. I enjoy the social aspect. It's rarely an hour that I'm not speaking to someone, whether it's on the phone or face to face or in and out of meetings. I think I'm able to use my best attributes in the job and benefit from them. So my analytical skills and being able to solve problems with research and facts and put data behind things. I find the market interesting, it's always changing. So like I said earlier, I'm 32 and I've been through the previous boom period, a recession in 2008, a rallying market, and another boom period until recently, and now we're slightly moving towards down market again. All in the space of 10 years. That's an exciting aspect. You've got to make clever decisions to accommodate the market. And the final one for me also as well is it's very flexible and they're very transferable skills. So if you want to go and work for yourself in the future, or you want to do up your own house, or you want to buy some investments on the side, you learn in your job how property works, how finance works, a bit of legal experience, and you can do these things. It's not that you have to do one thing forever and you've only got a very specialist set of skills. It's actually quite varied. I can see there being huge benefits to embracing technology for things like viewing property, measuring buildings, producing floor plans, the generic stuff that theoretically you wouldn't need a human to do. The problem you've got in property is that every building is different, every street is different, every person's desire is different as to where they want to live, shop, buy, work. And I think from that point of view it's going to be really difficult because it's hard enough dealing with humans in some of these regards. But I think the efficiencies, the sale process, the legal process of conventional conveyancing, buying, selling houses, that theoretically could be much more robotic, and you could probably have a person dealing with a lot of autonomy over a lot of machine-led functions underneath. But fundamentally I think you'll always need people because you can't force people's emotions when it comes to property.